Okay, well, I think we can get started. The call's recorded and it will be available on YouTube sometime later this week for those of you who could not attend. And yeah, I appreciate you guys showing up. Today we have a special guest, intern over here at R&D, working on the science and registry team. She's going to present here on a new project that's underway. And I'll just go ahead and get started walking through some of the regular items that we discuss on this call. This call happens every 2 weeks, community dev call, opportunity for community members to participate. Usually we start with 15 minutes of running through updates and then 15 minutes of discussion. I'm not sure if we'll use the full time today, given that I'm leading it, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, today's agenda. Here's a quick overview. Let's just go ahead and dive right in. So proposal number 11 passed. This was a community-led governance proposal to help out some participants in the initial token sale who were unable to access their tokens since Genesis, and these tokens have not been staked or transferred or touched in any sort of way. Thank you, Daniel and Josh, for leading the proposal and helping out this community member. It passed with 67% turnout, a little bit lower than our previous turnouts on other proposals, but that's most likely due to the fact that we shortened the voting period to 7 days. So just a quick reminder that proposal 10 was decreasing the voting period to 7 days. So all governance proposals on Regen Network are currently open for a 7-day voting period past the time the deposit was made. So our current plan, now that this proposal is passed, is to include the necessary changes, manual operations during the upgrade process that will distribute these tokens to a new account address for the token sale participant who's unable to access their fund. I believe there's just one person at the moment, but the community proposal is written in a way that there might be multiple people, and this would be a one-time change. If anything were to happen with the same community members, this is not something that we would do in a follow-up upgrade as well. But based on the community turnout and the voting pass, so we're going to go ahead and move forward with this, including it in 4.0 upgrade. And yeah, we're going to be working with Regen Foundation as well to verify the person's identity, and this person participated in our token sale, so they're KYC'd. So making sure all checks all boxes are checked. As far as governance discussions currently underway, new governance discussion came up to formalize the use of Commonwealth and to kind of establish a more clear guideline in terms of what the process is for submitting governance proposals. We did include updated guidelines in proposal number 10 when we decreased the voting period, which is available on the README, the homepage for the governance repo. But this would potentially create a more formal process and open to community feedback, obviously, and would love to have people participate in this discussion to help refine our guidelines in terms of how governance proposals are submitted and what the process is before submitting a proposal on chain. Also, the tokenomics upgrade LP incentivization discussion led by Will Zoll from Regen Foundation is still underway, and would love people to participate in that as well. When Regen Ledger 4.0, so about 4 weeks ago, I think I said maybe like a month out, we would be finishing up with some of the development work, and we are currently nearly complete with implementing all the features that we're planning to include in 4.0, and most of the refactoring work that I previously mentioned has been completed as well. And we've kind of started doing some auditing and testing while other people are still finishing up a few other items. You can track our progress with the issue and milestone listed here. And our current target is mid-May, giving us time to really do a full, thorough audit and making sure that all of our testing is complete and thorough. So currently targeting mid-May. There's one update into the Regen Ledger 4.0 upgrade, which is that we're no longer going to include Cosmos SDK version 0.4.6. 0.4.6 is also targeting an official release in mid-May, and we don't want to delay the Regen Ledger 4.0 upgrade based on Cosmos SDK v0.4.6, and then also following the 4.6 upgrade to Cosmos SDK, IBC and CosmWasm will also need to be updated. So this could potentially extend our timeline further. I believe IBC is working and making sure to provide support as soon as possible with the 4.6 release. I'm not sure where the CosmWasm team is at the moment, but CosmWasm is not necessary for the upgrade on mainnet, but we have included it as an experimental module, which will be available on Hambach following an official release for v4.0. So ideally, we would wait till CosmWasm and IBC have both been upgraded to support 4.6 before we move forward with upgrading to 4.6 on Regen Ledger. 4 weeks ago, I talked about the features that we're planning to include. Just do a quick recap here. In the EcoCredit module, we've introduced this new submodule architecture, and we're adding a marketplace submodule. This is going to support the ability for people to create sell orders for ecosystem service credits, and then to perform direct buy orders against those sell orders. When the sell order is created, the credits are held in escrow. This is kind of just an initial base level marketplace functionality that we're providing here. We have further plans for DEX functionality, but what we're calling this is a simple storefront model. And then also we're adding project support to core functionality of the EcoCredit module. So we previously included project location within the batch info, and we've actually pulled that out and created a new entity, which is a project in the core functionality of the EcoCredit module, which will allow for people to create projects that have their own defined metadata, as well as including the project location and any other information such as baseline measurements could be included in the metadata. And then the batch will actually just reference the project ID number rather than including the project information directly in the batch. So projects will be able to be created. We've also made the ability for projects metadata and admin to be updated. Basically, when a project is created, the creator will be assigned as the admin, and the only people that are allowed to create projects initially will be someone who's a designated issuer in the credit class, to avoid people creating projects that are not real projects. So there's some sort of permissioning set in place with project creation. So that might change in the future, but that's the current model that we're working with now. Also, we're adding the data module to the stable app configuration. This is something that we've been developing pre-launch on mainnet and a couple of years now, and we finally feel that we're ready to include it in an upgrade. This is going to allow for anchoring data, also known as secure timestamping, and then attesting to the validity of that data, and also the ability to define a data resolver and then register data with that resolver. So very excited to see that moving along and included in Regen Ledger. Additionally, we're making some migrations in terms of how we store data for each module, which is migrating to the ORM storage model. Basically, this is an abstraction layer over the key value store provided by the SDK that allows for more efficient lookups, basically allowing for us to use tables rather than the KV store directly. So in addition to that, we're adding dynamic minting of credits. I didn't talk about this 4 weeks ago, but this was under development and in design phase, and we've actually implemented this feature now. Basically, we're allowing for dynamic minting of credits to batches that are unsealed. And the idea here is that this would support bridging assets over from the Polygon chain. We're working with Toucan on the design and the implementation of this functionality, so that when, like, traditionally a credit batch is immutable, and the idea here is that in order to provide fungibility with credits that are coming from the same monitoring period, basically a new batch will be created for bridged credits, and then any credits that are matching the same monitoring period, rather than creating a new batch, it would actually allow for the dynamic minting of credits into the batch that represents the monitoring period and that has the same source. The idea here too is that we're preserving the immutability of credit batches issued natively on Regen Ledger, and so this would primarily used for just bridged assets over from Polygon and from other source chains in the future. Yeah, and there's a couple issues here: an issue outlining the design, and then the pull request implementing the initial API, if you're interested in digging in a little more detail. And now I'm going to pass it off to Josie, who's going to introduce the BuiltOnRegen project.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. So for anyone I haven't interacted with yet, I'm Josie. I've been working with Regen since the beginning of March, part-time, with the registry team. It's been fun to tackle this BuiltOnRegen Network project, which is this external facing public notion. It's a glossary of profiles of partners across our network. We have methodology developers next to grantees, next to verifiers, next to monitoring service providers. Pretty exciting. As of right now, this link is live. I'm happy to share it in the chat, or we can share it however after this call. And we're planning to promote it publicly next week, tentatively, across our channels. So there's a lot of different components on this page. Right now we have 7 complete project cards where Regen affiliates have gone in, multifaceted. Our affiliates have offered up kind of a basic education. What is the ecological story if they're a methodology developer, for example? What's the ecological story? You know, here on this slide, we have Yaupon Holly. What is Yaupon Holly? Or we have Dow Ocean. They're talking about the seaweed work that they're doing off the west coast of France. So there's this education component. There's this project outline component, which is, what are we working on right now? What is our relationship to Regen Network? And then there's also this needs and constraints component, which we've designed to enable collaboration in a decentralized way across projects. So maybe we have a project who is in need of a monitoring service provider. We have people who offer monitoring services. They can connect. Alternatively, maybe you have Dow Ocean, for example, who's looking to have conversations about blue carbon. They can connect with Lucas Winkleprince, who's also kind of thinking through these similar challenges. So yeah, exciting stuff. Next slide, please. So here, I have some examples that I pulled from the cards so you can get a feel for what's going on. Like I said before, our affiliates are filling out these cards with some help from the registry team, giving some basic education. In the second kind of skinnier photo, you can see this seeking collaboration section. Through Notion, we've been able to leverage this tagging feature, which will make it easy for people to filter out projects, whether they're looking for, again, like a monitoring service provider, they can see who offers that, or maybe they're working in agroforestry and they want to see what other projects are being developed across the network in that realm. There's also an option to do that. Next slide, please. So here's an example of that in a little bit closer way. This is Courageous Lands, who have been like a treat to work with. You can see all of the the tags that they've selected, that they can, other people can find them using these tags, or they can use some of these tags to find other projects. And in this upper right-hand corner, you can see examples of the different actors who are working across the network right now. So yes, next slide, please. As I said, right now we have about 7 people with a totally completed card. And we also have about 40 people who are logged on this page where they're still working on their card. It's in progress. There's a little quip about, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, this is our relationship to Regen, project outline coming soon. So this is a living link that will continue to develop and change as people interact with it. One exciting component about this, a big question that the registry team is getting right now is, okay, I'm a methodology developer, I'm developing this methodology that demonstrates improvement in water quality. What is the market for this thing? This is a place for an investor to come and say, oh, wow, there's 50 projects, there's 30 projects, whatever, that are developing these projects. We're building a market by putting all of these people and organizations in the same place. This is a way to decentralize, for these people to connect amongst themselves. And you know, this wave of regenerates that is rising up in response to the climate crisis, this is a way for innovation to happen. So yeah, this, like I said, I'm happy to share this link, and we'll be promoting it more publicly next week.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josie. It looks like someone's requesting a link in the chat too, if you could share that there. Cool. Moving ahead, just a couple more items. Regeneration News Hour, just as a quick reminder, we have this Twitter space every Thursday at 1600 UTC. Last week we discussed methodologies, biochar grants, science. I didn't listen to it myself yet. It's on my backlog of items to catch up on, but these are great conversations for the community to participate in and to discuss all things regen ecosystem, refi ecosystem. So check it out if you haven't already. The topics are kind of on a to be determined basis, sometimes being decided on the fly. I don't think there's one to be determined quite yet for this week, but tomorrow, Thursday at 1600 UTC, if you want to tune into the next Regeneration News Hour. And then, as usual, we provide updated market and liquidity report on these calls. So here are the stats. Dan went ahead and updated these earlier this morning. But as mentioned, Dan is at Ecosystem Retreat, and Gregory was out today. So I appreciate you all sticking with me and going through the community dev update this week. And yeah, we can use the remaining time for questions if anyone has any.
I'm curious about the dynamic minting within the batches, and I guess I took a quick look at one of the PRs, but I guess I didn't quite see what I was hoping to find. But maybe like soon there'll be documentation on that or something.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is just like a quick overview. This is something that we've been working with with the Toucan team. Basically, how assets are handled on different chains differs. So TCO2 token being bridged over to Regen Network doesn't align perfectly with our credit batch module or credit batch data model. So essentially, we're creating this ability for credits to be dynamically minted into an existing credit batch if that credit batch is unsealed or open. Any assets that are created on Regen Ledger, the default is to have credit batches sealed so that credits cannot be dynamically minted into credit batches. But in order to support assets coming over from other chains, And in order for those assets to be fungible within the same credit batch and to represent the same monitoring period, basically we need to add the support for dynamically minting batches to existing credit batches. So for example, if Alice sends 10 credits over from Polygon to Regen Network, and then she sends 10 credits over the next day. In the current model, basically, we would have to create 2 separate batches, even if those credits were from the same monitoring period. But to prevent that, we're creating this dynamic functionality so that the credits can actually be added to the existing batch if it's the same credit batch as represented like on the Vera registry, for example. So yeah, and that will also allow us to track and make sure double spending's not being occurred, because we'll include the origin transaction as well within that dynamically minted batch. So there will be documentation. I think a lot of that falls in my hands, and I've been trying to keep up with all the new features that we're implementing and providing documentation. My current focus is getting documentation up for the data module, but that would be the next item for sure to include documentation around. But nothing really changes for those interested in issuing credits natively on Regen Ledger, and there's no new security vulnerabilities for issues for credit batches that are sealed, and so there's nothing to be concerned in that regard. And this is primarily, the primary use case is to support bridging assets over from Polygon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious if there are any other use cases, but
there might be.
Question.
Yeah, and we discussed this too in some of our product calls, whether there would be potential use cases. I think there might be some edge cases where it could be beneficial to have an unsealed batch for a batch that issued natively on Regen Ledger. But I think we're still kind of exploring that, and the idea for now is that this would just be used for bridging assets. But people are able to override the default setting when issuing a batch. So if they do, for some reason, want to create this dynamic batch model, then that is possible, but R&D doesn't have any plans, or the registry doesn't have any plans to use it in that way, because we want to ensure the immutability of the credit batches issued natively on Regen Ledger. So I mean, yeah, that might be a question for others to talk on a little bit as well at a future time, or feel free to ping us in Discord if you have further questions about it. I wasn't fully involved in the design, but obviously reviewing and participating in discussions. So there might be other people that could provide a more detailed answer.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Couple minutes left. Any other questions?
Not directly related to what you've presented, but one of the questions coming up for me around, I guess it like batching triggers it at least, as I'm thinking about the endowment tokens and where they land with endowment candidates, because I believe it can only be issued once and it's all in one big block because of technical reasons. And I'm just wondering, does that tie into any of the functionality you're talking about here in being able to drip drab endowment offerings perhaps through the batches module?
I think that would be separate, and there's no real functionality on the horizon that might improve that other than the group module being included in SDK 4.6, which is being pushed back. It wouldn't necessarily allow for dripping assets, but it would allow for the better governance of the account that's receiving those assets. But the batch credit batch functionality specific to ecosystem service credits and not tokens. So it wouldn't necessarily change any of that. But yeah, that's a great question. And I think a technical problem that we would love to resolve. Essentially, I'm pretty sure the technical issue there is that we need to create a vesting account. And each time you create, each time you want to issue tokens to a vesting account, you essentially have to create a new vesting account. So that's like an issue more so on the SDK side of things that we're hopefully gonna figure out a solution for in the near future, but I don't think it will be there will be anything in the near term that will help resolve that, unfortunately.
Thanks. That's good to know. If it could land on a board somewhere, that'd be super appreciated, because it would really help endowment de-risk their allocations, and like I think doing that would provide incredible benefits for the ecosystem if we can drip drab stuff in a kind of safer way, rather than, you know, here's a huge allocation of tokens, please keep staking.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll make sure that it's being tracked somewhere, and I know it is already being tracked, but I'll try to resurface it and bring it to priority. Cool. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you all for joining and bearing with me on leading this call. And thank you very much, Josie, for joining and presenting Built on Regen. Very excited about that project. So have a good day. See you guys all in 2 weeks. And for those of you watching on YouTube, come to our next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks,
Cheers.
Josie.
Later.
Bye.